Alright, so let's talk about the DMC Elite's V5 Lagoon Edition. So this is not a new deck by any stretch of the measure or whatever the expression is. I get confused sometimes, but I always wanted some of these and now seems like a good time to talk about them. I'm honestly the worst when it comes to reviewing decks because my general criteria is, can I use them? Yes, then I'll use them. So as long as it's somewhat usable, then I'll still use them. So I'm honestly the worst when it comes to reviewing decks. So I'll try my best, I guess. So let's go over some brief history regarding this deck, and I mean not just this deck, but regarding the entire series of cards, right? So this deck was actually a collaboration between Magician DMC, or the full name is Drummond Money Counts. I think, oh man, I'm gonna butcher this so badly, so I'm just gonna call him DMC. And it's also designed by Phil Smith. So if you don't know who DMC is, he's actually a pretty popular magician who did stuff for Nat Geo. He did stuff for Nat Geo with a show called Card Shark, and he also did a show for Netflix called Death by Magic. And overall, he's just a performer who performs worldwide. So honestly, he has some pretty big backing. But regarding the deck, they actually first released the first edition back in 2015. I believe that it was actually red. Don't quote me on that. And it was printed by Cardamundi. So this was way back before they had their B9 or C9 or their E7 finishes. So this was when they still had pretty bad pretty bad cards, but honestly that information is long gone from the internet now. Well, not long gone, but there's not much information about the first edition anymore, so I can't be too sure about that. But since then, they basically released a whole bunch of other cards in a whole bunch of other colors and printed by USPCC and also printed by whatever this current company is, which is actually not named by DMC or Phil Smith, but I'll get into that a bit later on. But both DMC and Phil Smith also released the Card Shark series. So there's a V1 and V2. Those cards are pretty different from this, and they aren't marked. But now comes the unfortunate part, which is after 8 years of sort of collaborating together, the Card Sharks and the Elites are never going to be reprinted ever again because, well, DMC and Phil Smith's collaboration is over. So you'll never see these backs ever again. So, you might want to pick some up now. But to basically commemorate some of their work together, rather, both of them hosted a big sale with the remaining stocks of these cards. So Phil Smith's website is already all gone from some of them. So if you want to pick them up, you gotta pick them up from DMC's website, which is protected by a password. That's relatively simple, but yeah. So there's a couple of features I want to talk about regarding this deck. So the deck comes in a matte tuck. It's actually slightly thinner than the Clove Street Press, right? So if you're familiar with any matte tuck printed with a USPCC playing card deck, you'll notice that the matte tuck actually comes from Clove Street Press or was it Gambler's Warehouse? I believe that was it. Wait, right. Right, Gambler's Warehouse. Yeah, I think that's right. But their matte tucks are actually slightly thicker than the matte tuck that these DMC Elites come in. But what's really cool about these tuck cases, this tuck case, is that it actually comes embossed and debossed with a gold foil. So they are quite nice. But yeah, it's a pretty minimalistic tuck case. There's two jokers. One is normal and the other is a Two of Hearts reveal. There's actually two other cards. One card is actually a card revealing the marking system behind these backs, and another card is actually a Mnemonica cheat sheet. So if you don't know what Mnemonica is a stack deck created by Juan Tamariz. And I'm not going to go too much into detail with it because, there's an entire book dedicated to Mnemonica. So if you don't know Mnemonica, you should probably get it. But the deck actually comes straight out of the box in a Mnemonica stack, which is kind of cool, but I don't have much use for it. So, if you want to open a fresh deck and just have a deck in Mnemonica, then I guess that would be useful for you. But for me, I don't really care all that much. The faces, they're actually USPCC standard, so everything is USPCC standard. And there's the only thing that's really custom about these cards, well, face-wise, is the Ace of Spades. The back design is this nice light blue or light green background with a repeating diamond pattern. And you also see like a circle with a diamond on the inside, and yeah, it's on both sides. So overall, it's a pretty nice back design. It's nothing that's too luxurious, I want to say, but you know, for the most part, it's quite nice. But these cards are actually marked, so that's the main selling point behind these cards. They have something that's called an optical marking system, optical illusion marking system, or something along those lines, but I believe it's optical marking system. And honestly, it's quite nice because these backs are actually marked in 3 different ways. So the student value is actually on all 4 corners of the cards. So whether you spread the deck or you riffle through the deck or you do a peek, the marking systems are visible on all 4 corners. So you don't have to be, you don't have to be too conscious about like the selection process. There's also a second marking system, and that is on all 4 sides, all 4 borders of the back design, there's actually a one-way marking system. So it indicates like whether or not you have like a card turned around or whatever. It's pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's basically, yeah, that's it. For the third marking system is that there's actually a marking system that indicates the position of the card in a mnemonica a marked deck, right? In a mnemonica stack deck, rather. So if you have like 2 decks, so you have this deck, you have a card selected, this card will tell you the exact position of your other deck, which is in a mnemonica stack, which is actually really cool. Yeah, it's actually not the first deck to have this sort of system. I believe that the Shoot Ogawa Empire Keeper playing cards actually have the same principle. I actually have a few, so I'll just show the footage right now. So these cards are actually printed on an unknown stock with the Phantom finish and by an unknown company. So that's the main reason why I wanted to take a look at these cards, because, you know, unknown company with something called the Phantom finish. Clearly this could be something cool. And you know, I think I figured out the company behind whoever printed these. So that's yeah, let's get into that right now. Well, not right now, but a bit later on. So the deck is actually just 1 card thicker than your average like bicycle deck, and the finish is actually extremely similar to pretty similar to the air cushion finish that you'll find on bicycle playing cards. So I'll be comparing this deck to a bike deck just because that's a deck that everyone owns, so I might as well. But yeah, the finish is pretty similar to it. Like honestly, if you didn't tell me, like if I didn't know which company this was printed in, I just gave it to someone or to see, I think most people would say that this is a USPCC deck, but after you touch it a few times, you'll notice that these aren't USPCC. But yeah, so normally, because these aren't USPCC, I would have guessed that these were also not Taiwan or People's Republic of China or /China cards, since those companies only printed 54 cards and not 56. So I would have been completely lost at this point, right? It's not USPCC, it's not Cardamundi, it's not any of the Taiwan companies. So what is it? But then I got a reference point, and that reference point is Anyone Worldwide's ready-made playing cards. So those playing cards were actually printed in China. So those cards were printed in China by a company called Kingstar. So Kingstar is a company located in Guangdong, China. I need to switch to Cantonese for that because I can't pronounce it in English. So Guangdong, China. That was the weirdest accent I ever did. But yeah, so those cards actually share a lot of similarities with these ones, right? And so you'll find that, you know, some of the similarities include, you know, there's a USPCC-esque finish, which is here, right? There's a matte tuck on those, also check. They have a rather poor Pharaoh, check. And Kingstar, as far as I know, is the only Chinese-based company that allows you to print 56 cards rather than 54 like your usual Taiwan PRC deck, right? So these cards are probably printed by Kingstar. So I'll just do a review for 2 sections, so I'll just narrate over them. So right out of the box, these cards came with a heavy, and I mean heavy, chemical smell. Like, I'm not sure what it smells like, but man, this smells pretty bad. Like, I could smell the chemicals through the cellophane, which probably isn't good because I'm breathing it, and if it smells bad, then you probably shouldn't put it in your lungs, but I did, so that's probably not a good thing. The edges were actually pretty rough. They're not as rough as like a standard USPCC deck, but you know, they're still decently rough. Not too rough, but yeah. The borders are thin, right? So the borders are thin, but they're not like offset like most USPCC decks, so I'm quite happy with it. The design is actually pretty centered on the back, so it's actually sort of insane how bad USPCC like quality control is, because on bicycle cards you'll always notice like there's a pretty big offset, but for cards with a border this thin, the fact that there's not even like that big of an offset, like there might be like not even like 1 millimeter, like maybe less than that. The fact that there's just like that small of an offset is kind of insane. And the fact that USPCC like remained in business for this long with such bad quality control is kind of blows my mind, honestly. But offset wise, like there's pretty much no offset, which is pretty surprising. Right out of the box, these fan and they spread normally, which is great. They also don't have that weird waxy feel that comes with most Taiwan and PRC decks. If you're familiar with Expert Playing Card Company or Legends or Hansen Chen, then you'll know that most of their cards come with this weird waxy feeling, right? Almost like plasticky, but not quite. I mean, there is like just a bit of this waxy feeling, but it's not by much, right? It's very slight is what I meant. Cards are just slightly stiffer than your usual bicycle stock. Otherwise they're still pretty soft, like genuinely. And one major flaw that I found with these cards is that even when I smoothen out the edges, they're kind of bad at farrowing. So if you do farrow work, I wouldn't necessarily recommend these cards. Maybe I need to break them in, but for now they farrow pretty badly. So I'll just go over these cards right after a time skip, which, you know, is now, I guess. These cards are really sturdy. Like they're pretty sturdy. Like I filmed like a tutorial with them, I palmed the heck out of them, and they're still not like bent. Like they're still pretty in shape. They're almost like Fournier cards where they have like that like heavier and thicker stock, but even without that, they're not bent. They're not badly bent. It's actually really surprising. I mean, I don't do pressure moves, but still, right? It's kind of surprising how well these cards are holding up. The cards actually farrow a bit better now, but they're still worse than your usual, like most decks. Yeah, I've been handling these cards with my nasty summer sweaty hands, and honestly, yeah, they still fan and they spread well. They're starting to clump up just a bit, but honestly, they're still handling just fine. So yeah, these cards are surprisingly good, except for the part that they don't farrow. But besides that, yeah, they're perfectly workable. So overall impressions is that, you know, I was hesitate to get these decks because of how expensive they were. They're usually $20 dollars. USD dollars. I gotta stop saying that. They're usually 20 USD, which is really expensive, but because of the discount and the discontinuation of these cards, it finally motivated me to like get some, and I was like, oh fine, I'm gonna buy some, because if I don't buy them now, I'll never get them. So I finally bought them, and honestly, I don't regret it. So with the discount, these cards come to about $12.70 USD. So still not the cheapest deck, but honestly, for the marking system, for how sturdy they are, it's pretty good, right? So it's a good marking system with a like good stock. So honestly, I would pretty much recommend them. So if you're interested in these decks, I'll leave a link in the comments below. So I'll leave you like a link to DMC site. DMC site has a sale on them with a 50% discount code. You do need to go through a password for it. It's a very simple password, but most magicians will know it. But if you're not a magician, then sorry, I guess. But I'm not even sure that these cards will still be on the site by the time that you see this video, so you might want to hurry up, I guess. But if you're even slightly interested in this deck, I highly recommend you pick some up, because yeah, these are good decks with a really smart or like marking system, which I didn't touch on in this video. I just realized that, but you know, you don't need to know the marking system, that's all. Actually, let me demonstrate how effective the marking system is. I'll just do this. So for example, this card is the 10 of clubs. Yep. This card is the 3 of diamonds. Yep. This card is the 2 of clubs. Yep. Right, so it's such an easy marking system to read, and honestly, it's really effective. You can read it in an instant once you know the secret. And so honestly, I highly recommend you pick these up. And yeah, because they're getting discontinued, and it's really sad that such a smart marking system is no longer being, you know, put out. But besides that, yeah, thanks for hanging out with me. Yeah, just go pick some of these decks up if you want. I won't force anyone, but you know, since they're being discontinued, I would highly recommend you pick some up. But besides that, there we go. Stay healthy, stay safe, and we'll see you in the next video.